How's it going, guys? Indiana John here again. Gonna be doing another episode of Bali Basics, and gonna be talking about hardware. So, if you saw the first one, you're kind of familiar with, construction stuff like that. But I didn't really go too in depth on the actual hardware in knives. So, I guess I'll start with pivots. So a pivot looks something like that. These ones have a little Torx spot right there. Whoop. That was close. Like a $5 piece of hardware. So those go right through, holding the handles to the blade. And so this guy right here, the pivot system in it is just running on washers. So, got one of those on each side of the blade, and that's pretty much it, with the pivot going through it. This guy right here, the rep, has a bushing. It runs on bushings. It has bushings in the pivots, and a bushing looks like this. It's a little section of tube, and it is just barely. Little focus. It's just barely thicker than the blade is. Trying to see what I mean. So that when you tighten down on the pivots, the handles or liners or whatever pinch the bushing, and if it's tuned right, it can pinch the bushing really tight and not pinch the blade. So you can tighten it down a whole lot. I haven't actually tuned this recently, so I need to tighten it a little bit because it's got some wiggle, but yeah, so that's tap. But if you tighten it down and it's tuned and stuff, the handles won't hit the blade like that. Let's see. And this fella right here runs on bearings, right? So there are three types of bearings. There are washer ball bearings, there are caged ball bearings, and there are IKBS bearings. So with these guys, IKBS, there's just a counter bore around the pivot hole, and they just sit. They sit kind of in that groove around the pivot, and make it swing freely and stuff. With these two, they're very similar. These are like a metal cage kind of crimped around them, so that holds them in place a little bit better than these, where it's just a washer with a hole in it, because they can pop out of there pretty easily. So these do pretty much the same thing. You don't need a groove in the blade to have washers or caged washer bearings or caged washers. Caged ball bearing washers. Those can just sit right on the blade, like with this guy. Yeah, those are just sitting there because they didn't come in these knives, but you can just put them in there pretty easily. Alright, so that's pivot systems. I think that's pretty much it for hardware. I guess I could also go over Zen pins. So a Zen pin in a rep, this guy looks like this. It's got a little shoulder on it, so it sinks down a little smaller on the ends, so that pops right in to the liner, and they're threaded 256, so you can put all these different types of screws in there. These are all 256 screws. I've got some 632, 440, a bunch of different types of screws. So with 256, the first number, explains what size, like how big around the shaft of the screw is, and then the second number, 56, is the amount of threads per inch, or the TPI, thread per inch. So if it's 256, 2 means it's really small, and 56 means it is a very fine pitch. So if you were to have an inch long screw of 256, it would have 56 threads on it. And then 32 is a bit coarser. That's what most pivots are, is 632, and that's got 32 threads per inch. And 6 is a lot bigger around than 2, as you can see. And then 440 is pretty much right in the middle. 440 doesn't get used a lot in knives, or in butterfly knives, that is. Alright, so I think that's pretty much all the hardware. If I miss something, you can, do a comment and be like, hey, what about this? I did miss something. That right there, that little thingy on the bottom left, that is a tang pin. I think I found that somewhere where balisongs aren't usually, so I was a little confused. But I think that's pretty much a tang pin, which, goes in the tang. Okay. So there's that, and there is one more thing. There are also barrel spacers. So these are threaded barrel spacers, 256 size. So they can go right in the end of sandwich style Bali. You can also put them in this guy, yeah. So that's pretty much all the types of hardware. Yeah, I think that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and have a good one, guys.